But first, what could be more Australian than taking a Saturday afternoon to go down to Bunnings, get some hardware things for the home and maybe a sausage and a piece of bread. But what most Australians didn't realise, at least for 3 years between 2018 and 2021, is that when they went to Bunnings in New South Wales and Victoria, Bunnings were using facial recognition technology without their consent. After a 2-year investigation, the Privacy Commissioner ruled today that Bunnings had violated the rights of customers. Bunnings have been ordered to put an apology online, to destroy all the information they collected, and to promise never to do it again. Now, Bunnings escaped a fine because the Privacy Commissioner accepted their explanation that they had done this with good intent. Bunnings claimed they never used the information for marketing or for tracking people's habits. Instead, they were doing facial recognition and then cross-checking that data with a put together list of troublemakers so that they could identify people who were known to cause trouble at Bunnings early in order to keep staff safe. Now, while accepting the explanation, the Privacy Commissioner said that wasn't reason enough to violate people's human rights. Now, all of this came to light a couple of years ago after Choice magazine revealed it. And it wasn't just Bunnings. The Good Guys and Kmart were also accused of using facial recognition technology. An investigation into Good Guys has been dropped, but an investigation into Kmart's use of the technology continues. Caleb and Liz, I think Bunnings were pretty lucky not to be fined here. I mean, effectively, they were putting customers into what amounts to a police lineup without customers ever knowing. They were collecting highly personal information without consent, and we're expected to trust their explanation that they weren't going to use this information for anything else other than just trying to get ahead of troublemakers. But we're expected to believe that when they weren't upfront with us in the first place. I think they were very fortunate.
And that was the reason that was used to not give them the fine, that they had supposedly done it with good intention so that the fine was not needed. But regardless of whether or not they get a fine, this decision by the Commissioner is extremely important because it now sets the precedent that retailers cannot do this. The warning fire has been shot to say whether it's Bunnings or anyone else, you cannot put up facial recognition without full consent of the customer to that. Now, we still don't know exactly what full consent would look like. I mean, would it be as simple as a sign saying, if you enter this shop, you know you will be under facial recognition?
But then who's to say whether you see the sign? And
exactly, and how much do they have to detail what they're going to do with that, right? So this should, in effect, tell every retailer that they cannot do this anymore, and for that we should be extremely grateful. Because we've talked about this in terms of, it's been suggested you're doing it in public places as well. I think we did a story some months ago about, was it the Tube in London?
Yes.
Where they were doing facial recognition to monitor people's emotions so that they could potentially decide what sort of advertising to display in stations, etc. That's what this eventually leads to. Even if it begins purely as, OK, we're finding out who the troublemakers are, it's not a big leap to say, well, if you plug in a different bit of technology or software over here, we'll be able to track when you walk into the shop, when you walk out of the shop, your receipt is linked to your face, so they know when you come in that you're more likely to buy plumbing products or you're more likely to go to the garden section or whatever, and then they send down a staff member to try and upsell you on products. This is eventually where this stuff leads. And who's keeping the data? Where is the data being kept? There's no rules around how the data has to be kept. It could just be sitting in some server somewhere. I mean, Bunnings said that they deleted it within milliseconds if you weren't one of the dodgy people on their list. But we don't know who's holding that data. We know everything gets hacked these days.
Yes.
Imagine if someone's got all this biometric data on loads and loads of people and someone hacks that system. That is extremely valuable data.
Even if it's not hacked, Liz, that data becomes an asset, right? That could easily be sold for a lot of money to various organisations.
And we know that plenty of companies do this. I mean, it wasn't long ago we were doing another story on insurance companies getting data from your oh-so-smart cars that are tracking when you brake, how hard you brake, all the rest of it. And people were finding their insurance policies were costing a lot more money, asking why, and finding out through their insurer they were in bed with the people gathering the data from the car's database, and they decided, well, you're actually not that safe a driver. I feel like the Commissioner has very much taken Bunnings' word for it with regard to this entire case. It'll be interesting to see if Kmart gets a similar ruling. They too are under exactly the same investigation because, as you were just told, they too were busted back in June 2022 by choice. The good guys don't have an investigation into them, but it will be interesting to see whether Kmart gets a different ruling, because they can just as easily argue, as I'm sure they will, the exact same things Bunnings did, which was our motives are in the right place. We're just trying to crack down hard on the baddies. But don't we know that is the case with all surveillance systems? It's the individual privacy of the masses in order to assure their safety from the handful of bad guys. I don't know about you, but I'm not willing to trade it in.